Yo, what's up, YouTubers? It's pretty cold out here. We'll have to get a little shaggy, stay warm. So, I know you were more of a Dapper Dan man, but you know, what did you come out here to see? Was it John the Baptist was out in the wilderness, and back then it was known that prophets were pretty rough guys, and when they go out there, they found John dressed in camel's hair and eating wild honey and locusts. Which, if you have knowledge, that's a sign of a prophet. Anyway, when they found him, he looked at him. He said, "Well, what did you expect to find?" He said, "Men in soft clothing live in palaces. I'm out here in the wilderness." Or whatever, you know. So I thought that's a nice bit of knowledge that a lot of the unstudied overlook. So it's cool to find these little nuggets like this, and if you can stack these little nuggets, you start getting these bigger pictures and bigger concepts and stuff. And in the moment that you can strike up a conversation, if you get you about probably 3 to 5 little nuggets, you can give these to folks during the conversation based on what they're interested in, and you can stack your knowledge of these little nuggets. Because see, as you read the Bible and you study it, you'll never get to the end of it. So it's very beautiful in that way. You know, I'm very thankful that God's smarter than I am. And every aspect, no matter which way I go to follow out the train of thought, there's always more. And even like searching for the more, if it's just like, you know, black or white, end of story, the fact that it's end of story for that particular topic makes me think, why does he stop here at this? You know, and I can see more into his character, into the thought processes and stuff that God must have had to take this train of thought to a stop. And then seeing that, and then it's like, oh wow, so there's all this other, you know, and I bring that up because hell, like burning in hell, like, okay, God loves us, and he knew everything, but he still created the place for the fallen angels, knowing we would wind up there. And for him to take on the love of his creation and also the sadness of its destruction. These are extreme extremes. Did I say that right? I didn't say the same thing 3 times just there. It was the same word, but it was a train of thought I was expressing for contextual purposes. So, for him, you know, to just be like, nope, here's the line. You know, where is that? And for him to express that to us with, this is a statue forever. Very, very amazing to see, and very amazing to see him bring about the Messiah or Savior, you know, and realizing just how serious it is, not taking it for granted, but really giving thanks for Messiah, really giving thanks for Jesus' atoning blood shed for us. He gave us life. He gave up the ghost. He laid down his life for you and for me. And it's actually easy to understand if you've ever been a parent or a good friend. Like, would you take a bullet for this dude? Oh yeah. Would you take a bullet for your wife and kids? Sure. You know what I mean? Like, and there's such a power in it. And it's like, yeah, I would give up my life to take care of the lineage, kinfolk. And, you know, they need a country to live in and stuff like that. So this Thanksgiving, I want to bring up the veterans especially. And, you know, some gave all. And there's a part that says something about laying down his life for his friends. And that's very Christ-like. And if you've ever been under fire, it's a scary situation. And you're doing what you can in the moment appropriately. And you're doing it for self-preservation a little. But for preservation of friend. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's why. That's really why. I've never seen an interview with somebody or talked with somebody or anything else like that where they did not express the love of brother at arms. You know what I mean? And they're doing what they're doing because if I don't, the man next to me ain't gonna make it. And then we see that in such a harsh form. People romanticize D-Day, but they had this thing where they would say, "Don't shake the nets." Okay, so they had these cargo nets. They were climbing down the sides of these ships to get down to the water, to the water line to get on boats and stuff like that. And this is just a big cargo net slung over the side, being used like a ladder to climb down to get onto a boat, and then take the boat, the Higgins boat, and they'd run into ground and drop the thing, and you had to run out in machine gun fire. A lot of people tried to jump over the sides. The back of it was so still deep in the water, depending on how they grounded, that their gear would weigh them down. And a lot of people drowned and stuff. But the part that a lot of people don't talk about is don't shake the nets. So if they got they were climbing down to the boat, and it's all going down, and they just lock up and get scared, and they would start shaking. If they shook the net too much, it'll cause people to fall off. So sometimes they would shoot the guy shaking the net. So stress inoculation is a big part of the nowadays preparation for, you know, the circumstances of life. So stress inoculation, well, we don't have that. That's where we get these spoiled kids, and they're just freaking out over next to nothing. You know what I mean? Like, we've all seen the kid throwing a fit at the store or whatever, and their parents have to deal with that situation appropriately so that these kids don't have the similar reaction when they're 25, 30 years old and they don't get their way. So today I was talking with a guy at the 5 Minute Ministry, and he was a GW Lions, and this man was a veteran of the Vietnam War, and he got drafted, but he said he'd sign up for 3 years if they let him pick, and he chose to be a helicopter mechanic. And when he got over there, they were short on personnel, so he wound up a crew chief and was actually going out and doing stuff in the helicopters. And at one point the helicopter crashed, and anyway, I say this very specifically and say his name because the man needs prayer. So if you'll pray for GW Lions, that would be great. But while we were standing there, he mentioned that he had wrote a letter to Trump and said that every person should be drafted so to save America. Now, I did not read the letter or anything else like that. And he asked me if I would. this is the flip phone kind of guy. And he asked me if I would make mention if I had opportunity. I said, well, I'll do the best I can. It's not exactly a letter, but I do talk to folks in various ways. I didn't bring up the YouTube channel or nothing like that because it's just not appropriate, right? Anyways, so I made a video on Skin Degraph. I posted it, I was all happy Thanksgiving and stuff. But it really, man, like, it's stress inoculation. Stress inoculation. So, like, you don't want to be that guy shaking the net. And how are you going to not shake the net? You're going to be put in a position of stress. And then I seen Fat show the Fat Electrician. He makes mention of Sergeant Reckless, a horse, mare, short mare they used to run ammunition. And when they got the horse, they had to stress inoculate. And if anybody's been around horses, I'm telling you right now, the last thing you want to do is get a green broke horse and shoot a gun. You're going for a ride, buddy. I'm telling you right now, it's very important to have stress inoculation in the horse. And the horsemen back in the day, one of the reasons of strength in the previous generations was that before cars, everybody had to deal with horses. So if you're dealing with, whether or not you can put gas in the car or whatever, and, keep tires on it and stuff, that's a lot different than, is this horse going to buck me off or buck one of my kids off or cause a problem to whatever degree. And then as I'm dealing with that horse and stuff like that, I'm going to be around my family, I'm going to be around my kids, I'm going to be around the public and stuff like that. I'm liable for my animals if they get to, injuring other people or causing damage to private property, maybe even civic property, whatever, I'm liable for the conditioning and the actions of my animals. That's part of being a man. And some people will say a homeowner or a rancher or owning a homestead, running an outfit, however you want to say it. Back when people understood the phrase make a hand, they knew that you were a hand. You know what I mean? You might even be a top hand. But if you were the owner or something like that, you would get a slightly different title. And then every man was responsible for his household. And that requires a stress inoculation for us to go out and do the reps and sets necessary in each aspect of being a man. From the part that you're suited to deal with, that you're kind of geared towards certain endeavors, monetize what you like, and you'll never work a day in your life type of deal, whatever, some kind of fantasy land there. But, are you going to do this enough to be able to hire someone to do your budget, or should you be able to do your own budget? You know what I mean? There's I know how to do this, but I don't like it. And this other thing, I've become so professional, I can hire this other stuff done and kind of buy back by paying a wage, buy back my time to put it towards what I'm better suited to do. And I've made this, work out to the point that the money's right, so it makes sense. Well, you're very rarely are you going to get to that point on your own 2 feet if you don't know a little bit of all of it. So there's, being this super duper expert at this thing that you enjoy or you're geared towards or whatever. Maybe you don't like it at all, but you're just good at it. You know what I mean? Whatever, this thing that you've monetized, you know what I mean? And then, we all have a plan until we get punched in the face. So, life punches us in the face with, oh, surprise, she's pregnant with triplets, or whatever, babies come, cars got sold. I learned quick them GTOs don't run on faith. working maximum hours for a minimum wage. That's a country song. The song is called Something to Be Proud Of. Something to Be Proud Of. Shout out to Mr. Montgomery and Gentry. I think Gentry has passed. So, good band there. Anyway, great video too. Great video, by the way. You know, something to be proud of. Maybe I'll figure out how to put stuff in the description one of these days. Anyway, so if we get out here and we're under stress flexing our muscle to do these various things, it's absolutely critical for us, like in a similar manner that I find somebody at the gas station, talk about it, and then I'm making my videos on here to share that, to give a documentation of what's going on, and some pointers, you know what I mean? Like, I want to say pro tips, but you know, this is not a paid deal, you know, this is a shared on a show, so, you know, it is what it is. I would like for you as a man to identify the stressors, identify the process, and what made you good at it, what made you bad at it. Make that list and go over the topic with your son, and take each topic, you know what I mean? Dealing with sheep, dealing with cows, dealing with horses, raising geese. Why are you geese? You know what I mean? Because of golden eggs. They're herbivores. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be 2 years into the apocalypse and my chickens competing with my children for the cornmeal. I'd rather have geese. You know, for some reason nobody wants an ox. I have no idea. Like, if somebody out there, if you will get some oxen and start building your herd, like, yeah, the ox and cart won the West. So I don't know why everybody is sleeping on this deal, but whoever has, you know, 500 head of ox in the apocalypse is going to do very well with the movement of freight. So yeah, that ain't nothing to sneeze at right there. It's really not. It's like they're really good at stuff. Like if you want to, you know, do some sustainable whatever. I think over there in Delaware County, Oklahoma, you can buy unimproved land and just like not do nothing to it at all. Put like a fence by the road and then like just leave it, the rest of it alone, and you can claim wildlife refuge because wild deer are just walking around out there. You know what I mean? Because you've chosen to not improve this land or whatever. You know, so there's ways for a man to obtain properties and stuff and get through. Okay, but what I've found is there's a lack of there's a lot of people shaking the freaking net. Okay, they're everywhere. We see people getting psyched out, not doing what they're supposed to do, and then we see some extreme people that they're like, hey, you're causing everybody else a problem, so you're out of here. Whether that's getting fired, kicked off the team, whatever, you know what I mean? Actually shot on D-Day. I don't know. Depends on how serious it is. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely don't want to be that guy, nor our children be that guy. So as I was talking with that guy, as I was talking with George Washington Lyons, named after his lineage on his mom's side, George Washington. Like that guy, like for real, like the guy, according to him. I didn't check his, you know, DNA or nothing. But I like to take a man at his word until he proves himself a liar, rather than call him a liar until he proves himself right. Because I don't know, I just like, I try to be honest. So until my bullshit-o-meter goes off, I assume that you're telling me the straight of it. And when I stand in front of God, I will give account for what I did, not what you did. You're on your own on that deal. So, I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm making this way too long. But the stress inoculation, what does that look like? And all communication, all problems are communication problems. So, I ain't nothing to sneeze at there. And I just, man, write it down. If you can't watch this for 20 minutes and spend an hour, make your own bullet points, then do some takeaways for how can I apply this to making sure my kid is not on the cargo net shaking, getting shot. And if the cargo net is, the teacher called on my kid to answer the question, and they just walk up and can't do public speaking, and they, fail the test. A great way for stress inoculation is to read the Bible together. Get everybody the same Bible. That's why I like these free Bibles. They're real good. It's just the New Testament. It ain't a big, thick, intimidating book. It's a little paperback book. Okay, we want baby steps here. We're teaching the children. Like I was talking with the guy today, you got age and stage. Okay, so I might be 50 years old, but I've only read the Bible 3 times my whole life. So I'm an infant in the Word, but I'm in the stage of life of Grandpa. So I'm like Grandpa infant. You know what I mean? And ignorant to certain things. But then once I see it in the Word, now Grandpa infant's going to grow into a man of the Word incredibly quick, because he's going to recognize principles and stuff that he already knows. And as he realizes he already knows the truth, because the truth comes out. It just takes time. Take some truth, add time equals it came out. So, because he's a grandpa, and then he's reading in there, it's better to cut your hand off than to be thrown into a lake of fire. He's like, that checks out. So, I mean, it's so easy a caveman can do it. So this dude's going to progress fast. Okay, and then you got this other person that's super seasoned in the Word. And so his age in the Word is a lot, but he's physically been on the planet for 23 years. So he's not going to have the same, he's at a different stage of life. You can be at a stage of life, and then you can be at a stage of study as well. So with age and stage, there's multiple ages, there's multiple stages, and it's all subject specific. So wherever you're at, to pump the brakes on pride and to deflate the ego and boost the meekness, and I mean significant meek boost, which sets you up, puts you in a position to inherit the land, which is substantial. Go back to the basics, because I was, at a different age and stage when I studied on the basics. And then now I'm at a different age and stage, and I'm going back and doing these basic things again, and it's like, oh wow, you know what I mean? This is substantial. And I've done this for years, inadvertently, just going back to rev it up 1, 2, 3. So by doing the Revelation chapter 1, 2, and 3, and getting real amped up about the promises and being like, well, I need to repent over here on this deal and stuff like that, and getting a good healthy fear of God going, you know what I mean? And a healthy fear, like, he could throw me in hell, but Jesus died for me, so I'm not going to hell. So like, yeah, I need to tread lightly or whatever else like that type of deal at a certain age, but at a certain point in maturity, that tread lightly turns into, I don't want to grieve the Holy Spirit because I love Him. And that's a maturity thing. And then now I go back and read the Ten Commandments, which is real basic. And I'm like, oh wow, now out of love of God, do not murder, do not lie, pay your taxes, keep the Sabbath, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's real hard to take God's name in vain when I love Him. And then mature in that for a while, and now you're on this point where, like, God is the Most High, and you will choose God over your own life, the life of your wife, kids, kinfolk, money, everything that can be named under the sun. If required, choose God or any of that stuff I just said. And you'll choose God, hey, well, the Creator, like the one above the false gods. Now go back and read the basics, because you're at a different stage, you're at a different level. You know what I mean? Like, I got Beacon up to inherit the earth and then didn't want it because like management nightmare or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So and then finding these principles where it's like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but I can actually get it done in the earth if I don't care who gets the credit. Finding nuggets of ultimate value, eternal life. Bro, the allure of being like God and not dying was how Satan tricked them in the beginning. They weren't going to die to begin with. They never would have died. Somebody come in there and complicated it. I suspect that Satan used a word with 4 or 5 syllables when he was tricking Eve. Well, 4,225,621.432 years ago, insert whatever, just say whatever after saying numbers like that. Seem real official. As I consult my syllabus, I can't even think of a word with a bunch of syllables now. Syllable is real close. It's real close. That's a pretty big word. And these things are unnecessary to articulate oneself when you're talking with a child. And if you break these things down to a child level, then you actually know what you're talking about. And when you're using these big words to overtalk, you might know what you're talking about, but the words that you're delivering are not digestible to the average common man, rendering them hot air because nobody knows. And then there's the description of the description of the description with some laughter and condescending. It turns into word salad and information overload. That's just, freaking Kamala Harris. So there's a going back to the basics that's going to help you so much. And one of the basics is stress inoculation. Stress inoculation. And I don't know how that overlap goes for each situation and scenario. But when I think about a guy having his kid pay attention while he goes through the whole process of breaking a horse. I mean, go from, somebody gave me this horse because if you know anything about horses, when you go from somebody gave me this horse
in half a mile,
and you're
keep
limping
left to continue on I-57. Follow signs for
all
Memphis.
the way to you trust your, granddaughter, place her on the horse's back, or the horse will kneel down so the kid can get on.
Keep left to continue on I-57.
Genuinely gentle, kid broke horse. We went from a lot of cuss words to a lot of words of endearment. You know what I mean? If your son is, of age, let's say he's at the age of accountability, but it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And I'm going to say this, then we'll get off here. If you're struggling with money, good. If you're with your family. If you're not with your family and you're struggling with money, go be broke next to your kids. Don't lose your family and be broke. You know what I mean? Don't come out here in the world, go get some job on the road, this, that, then come home, and you're still on the, it ain't working out. It's not enough. Ends are not meeting. Now listen, if you're making enough to make ends meet and you just don't know how to budget, get some help with that or whatever. But, I'm talking to the young man here, or to any man. I don't care. If you're 50 years old and this is your third attempt at life, and you got a house that's in dire need of work, and you're doing everything you can, and you're broke, and you don't know where the money's going to come from, but you're with your family, dude, that's worth so much more, okay? Because my dad, he would go out on the road and work, but there was a lot of times where he stayed home. And when he stayed home, we really struggled. I mean, bad. And I learned a lot from both situations. And in my own life, I pretty much always stayed on the road working to have some scratch. And I have went out and worked on the road and came home and been broke too. You know what I mean? But I've lost families. You know what I'm saying? So, I know what it's like to lose a family, and I know what it's like to have a family. And if I have a family and I'm home and I'm broke as shit and I'm doing what I can to survive, my kids are watching me do what it takes to survive. My kids are watching me continue to trust God to turn this situation into a blessing. And this is, helping them deal with various stresses and situations. And the last thing I'm going to do is any type of beat myself up in front of my wife and children over not having some money. You know what I mean? It's very frustrating when you don't have the money that you need for the materials or the tool. Like, there's that saying, I either got time with no money, or I got a bunch of money and no time to do it. So, they invented credit cards, then you had time and money, and then if you'd just bootstrapped it, you'd had, struggle in front of the kids. So really, MasterCard is taking dad away from the kids. It just, there's a 9-month delay. So, don't beat yourself up. Look at it for the truth that it is. That you are there with your kids struggling, and the stress of that situation is stress inoculation. So your kids, if they find themselves on the cargo D-Day, they ain't shaking the deck. They find themselves in a corporate situation, And the board of directors puts them under pressure about some project, they're going to come through with flying colors. You know what I mean? You're building that in them. You know what I'm saying? And I seen that when my dad was struggling, you know. And then he'd go out here and he'd work for one of these people, and they would pay him like dirt. And he'd treat them like gold. And it looked like he was kissing their ass to me, because I was a prideful young man with no maturity. But then later, I seen what it was like, you know, because I wanted to be a stand-up kind of guy, and I wouldn't take no shit off nobody. And I was running my own thing or whatever, and if you didn't like it, you could, you know, take this job and shove it was my theme song. Like, my name is Skip. Like, yeah, you're on your own under certain circumstances, and then actually, you know, the walk off and leave was the maturity. Before that, it was, you know, we're gonna knock some teeth out. So I had to get over some stuff to even be able to skip town, skip court, skip when I'm walking, whatever. Yeah. So before that, it was just all find out. You know what I mean? Like, it went from, you know, I'm not in school yet because I'm so young, to I should be in school, but instead I'm working, to like I'm fighting grown men. And then later it's like maybe I shouldn't duke it out with this guy. I should just like leave, you know. When I actually developed a fight or flight and made a decision to leave instead of fighting. Which, I mean, we're talking about age and stage here, and maybe my dad should have been around a little bit more to, you know, deal with the horse instead of just letting me go with the motorcycle, whatever, don't know. But I'm just trying to do what I can do, man, out here, you know what I mean? And, George Washington Lions asked me to recommend to Trump and all these kids to bring back the draft and to draft everybody's kids, so that their sons would have to go learn how to fight and die for the country, and that the women would learn to be women again, and the men would be men. I'm pretty sure he's talking about stress inoculation, though. I guess I'm just going to say stress inoculation. Oh, that's that big word. Okay. I'm not even going to do it. I'm not going to break down stress inoculation. I'm on the verge of word salad here. I'm not trying to sound smart. Maybe I'm just talking it out as I go, because I do that a lot. And I watch these things too. Like, I'll watch this and go, oh, that's what I was talking about right